Hi, everyone. You hear a solo voice today because it's just me. Welcome back to Mind What Matters. I usually do this with Liz. It's the first time running solo, but in just a few seconds, you're going to know why, because I had to catch this guest and I had to talk to her. And Liz was in New York having a bunch of meetings, and she's there with her 3 children, and, and she just couldn't get any quiet. And our next guest, she is going to be a wealth of knowledge for so many of you who are listening, so many caregivers, whether you are in it, whether you are passing through it, whether you haven't even begun your journey. Liz and I talk about it all the time. You will be at some point in your life a caregiver. And this guest, I told her, I said, I'm just going to jump in. We usually talk a little bit up top, but I have so many questions for you that I'm just going to say hi, and then I'm going to start by introducing you. So everybody, welcome to the podcast, Dr. Macie Smith. So Macie, yes, Dr. Macie Smith is a nationally recognized gerontologist, award-winning educator, and best-selling author of The Complete Dementia Caregiver's Guide, Expert Strategies for Dementia and Alzheimer's Care. Who doesn't need that book? With over 25 years of dedicated experience in aging, something we don't talk about enough, and dementia care, as a licensed gerontologist social worker and the owner of Diversified Training Consultants Group, she has become a leading voice in caregiving, Alzheimer's, and dementia care. And I love this, aging on purpose. As a high-energy and electrifying keynote speaker, I've spoken to her for 5 seconds before we got on, and she is electrifying. Dr. Smith is known for her ability to blend professional authority with relatable storytelling. She frequently speaks at national conferences, corporate events, and community workshops on topics including women in leadership, which, yes, ma'am, we need to talk about that too. Self-care, caring for the caregiver, and managing the care of those with dementia, whether she is appearing at the White House or delivering a keynote with her signature. I love this. Mama, ain't nobody stole your pots. Talk. Dr. Smith's mission remains the same and is to activate and inspire minds of those who care for yours. Welcome to Mind What Matters, Dr. Macie Smith. It's such an honor to talk to you today.
It is such a pleasure to be here, Nikki. I'm ready to tackle whatever questions you have for me today.
Well, my mom always told me I was a curious person. So it's like from the time I was born, and I am curious. I always like to start with what is mattering, because on the podcast we talk about all things caregiving, and it's everything literally that you do. It's caring for the self, it's caring for others, it's caring for community, but we also talk about all things that matter. So for you today in this moment, what is one thing that is mattering to you right now?
I love how you say that you've always been curious. I'm going to write that down. I love that word because you should always be curious. So I'm from the South. I'm from North,
Me
South Carolina. We talked
too.
about that
I
offline.
love it.
That's a
North,
real
South
place.
Carolina. It
That's a
is.
real place with a zip code and a post office, right? And we would say people were nosy. So I
Ooh,
would say, I'm nosy. So if I don't nose, I'm not going to know anything. But people don't like nosy people, but they love curious people, right? So I'm
yes.
going to use that term as opposed to nosy. I'm just curious. I love
Yes.
the title of this podcast,
Thank
Minding
you.
What Matters. Minding What Matters. So you want to know what matters. I mean, a lot of stuff. I've learned
Okay.
that everything matters to somebody, right?
Mm,
But what's always at the core of the work that I do, whether it's professionally, personally, advocacy driven, education, it is about the caregiver. And I'm talking about the family caregiver and the professional caregiver, because we have two that really go hand in hand, that wrap around services, wrap around
yeah.
support around the person who's living with the condition or disease. In my specialty practice, that is the person living with dementia. And what matters to me is the family that's living with dementia, because it's not just the person, it's all
No.
y'all, all of us.
Yes, we are all in it all the time, and it's complicated because everybody comes to it with their own set of traumas, their own brain wiring, their own reactions or inability to react to
Mm,
something. We were touching upon this just before, like sometimes there is a natural caregiver in the mix, and that person steps up. And
yeah.
sometimes it does get to be the whole family, but a lot of times it lands on one person. You know, I hear that in stories with families all the time where they'll be like, oh, well, my sister is the person on the ground and they, you know, they're really the
Mm.
one that like, or my, you know, my brother or my this or my that. And it does take the whole family, but sometimes it's not
It's
the whole
usually,
family.
yeah, it's usually just one person. And Nikki, let me say this. I've been in the industry at this point over 26 years.
Wow.
Not always, but a lot of times, the person that's providing the hands-on care, the person on the ground
Hmm.
doing the everyday type of stuff, they're usually not even the healthcare power of attorney. It's the sister that's in Maryland, that's the healthcare power of attorney. You know, she's calling down, giving orders and telling everybody what to do,
Oh,
but she's not the one that's on the ground doing it. And so you got this imbalance of the person who knows it all because they're there and they're bearing the brunt of the responsibility, but everybody calling the sister
I really wish
up
my
there.
partner Liz was here because this was her exact experience. Her brother had the power of attorney, but she was the person on the ground. And
Yeah.
it was so, it's something we talk about a lot. Parents, when we are setting these things up, we got to be smarter than this. We
Yeah.
really have to have these conversations because we can't put our children in this situation.
Oh my
Because
God.
the brother was demanding things that because he wasn't on the ground and he had no idea what was happening on the ground, and he's demanding things that specifically would have put her through so much pain
Yeah.
inside her care. And Liz was the person on the ground going, no, 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 no.
You
That's not
can't.
what's happening. She's actually dying. We're not going to put her on antidepressants.
Mm,
She's dying.
come
You
on.
know, we're not gonna, yes, and she was having to deal with that for months and months and months and months while she was on the ground every day taking care of her mom. And
Yeah.
I think we do our children a disservice when we don't recognize I know parents inside of that. And actually we can start here because it would be an advice question I would ask you. Every family comes to a place, and you know, with my family it started with my grandfather. When my grandfather, the patriarch of the family, went down. And um before that happened, though, this a situation had happened in my husband's family, and they had nothing put together in
Mm,
terms of power of attorney or in terms of trust or in terms of or any of that. And it was a disaster that they ended up dealing with for 20 years.
wow.
And so when I saw that go down, I called my uncle and I said, I feel like you guys need to start getting everything organized for Papa, for his business, for your business, for everyone's. Luckily, by the time my grandfather went down, my uncle had everything buttoned up. And
That is a
so
blessing. That's a
it was
gift.
such a blessing, but most families don't want to look this in the eye. And they also think that they're doing their children, well, instead of giving all the quote unquote power to one person, I'll separate. I'll make one person the power of attorney, but I know that this one will be the one navigating it. And what that ends up doing is causing a lot of friction often, and
Mhm.
it breaks up and tears up families. So what would you advise to families that maybe aren't, especially get ahead of it before there is a crisis?
Yeah.
How would you push them and advise them to just deal with this, and why?
Yeah. Unfortunately, people tend to come to me in my practice when there is a crisis, after
Yes.
there's been a diagnosis, after there's been strife in the family. So at that point in time, I become the mediator. right?
Mhm.
Because it's a third person. It's always ideal to either, before you even get to this point, because you should start planning now. Planning doesn't come with an age. Planning comes with living, right? You got to get that scheduled today. So
Yes.
I often say, either if there is one person in the family that has the best relationship with the senior, that
Mhm.
person should have the conversation. But first, they got to get the knowledge to be able to have the conversation. And it has to be someone who they trust, because if it's someone who they don't trust too much and that person got a little problem with money, I'm not going to listen to that person because they probably going to take my money. So it has to be one person in the family that they trust to start having the conversation. I often recommend seeing a certified elder attorney. A certified
Mm.
elder attorney specializes in elder law, which is a little different from other types of law, right?
Absolutely.
So that elder attorney is going to advise the senior and their family member, if they're going in with them, on what things look like, what paperwork should be in place. And that example that you gave about dividing all these pieces and parts up between all these different people, which causes chaos, that certified elder attorney would be the one to say what the person should do. You want to take it out of the hands of the family, because people are going to have their perceptions about
Yes.
what their ulterior motives are, even if there are none. Sometimes there could be some, because I deal with, in the probate court here in South Carolina, I deal with abuse of healthcare power of attorney all the time, right?
Oof,
So
yes.
and when you have that third person in there, that's the professional providing advice and giving recommendations, then the senior typically follows suit. But
Mm.
sometimes there still needs to be a family advocate or a support measure in there to see it follow through to completion. And
Yeah.
everybody's family is different, but what I have seen and what I recommend that works best is having a third party. It could be a geriatric care manager like myself. It could be a certified elder attorney. It could be a licensed social worker, but a third party that has experience and knowledge and has no buy-in, no
Yeah.
subjectivity at all. And then the
Yeah.
family may be more apt. And, you know, worst case scenario, you could go to the courts. You can go to, in some states, it's under family law. In other states, it's the probate court. But if you don't need to get the court involved and the judge assigns me to the case, then try to work it out without that stringent measure, because that brings on personalities you have never seen before.
Oh, I mean, I could tell you stories just with my husband's family that will literally, you'll go, that's a Lifetime movie, except it happened in their real life. And
Oh my gosh.
Yes. And so when people think, oh, it's not going to happen to us,
Oh yeah.
that's, I think, a dangerous place to start from, because the family that thinks that'll never happen to us is exactly the family that it'll end up happening to. But the ones who are, it's like I once, a therapist once said to a friend of mine who went in, and she has this mother who's a narcissist, and she said to her therapist, like, I just want to make sure that I don't turn out like my mom. And the therapist said to her, well, you're here making sure and going through all the steps and working on it and asking the questions, so I can guarantee, just the fact that you're here and doing this, that you are not going to end up like that, and that you are not that. And so I think it's the same thing that's true for the person who goes, ooh, we need to make sure and get this in some sense of alignment so that we can stay together as a family. So everybody
Yeah.
goes into this knowing what their positions are and what their jobs are, and we have it all together. I always like to talk to people about their why, because I think, you don't come to social work, you
Mm.
don't come to dementia and Alzheimer's work, you don't come to gerontologist without a strong why. So for you, what was your why in getting into this work?
I have to rephrase that. Um, it's really not my why, but it's God's purpose. And I'm going to tell you
Oh,
why.
I love that.
I didn't graduate from South Carolina State University with a degree in social work and my master's in rehab counseling to say that I'm going to be a gerontologist coaching family caregivers through a dementia care crisis or Alzheimer's crisis. I didn't say that. I knew that I wanted to be a social worker because it involved two things:
Mm.
talking, because on my report card it was always talks too much, talks too much, talks too much. Talking and helping someone live a better life. My mama
Mm.
always taught me, if you're going to be in somebody's life for a reason or for a season, your only job is to make sure you leave them a little bit better off than how you found them.
Amen. That's my whole philosophy in life.
Oh my
To
God.
to leave, like, even when I would audition, this is so silly, but even when I would audition, I never made my why getting the job, my why or my purpose with every audition, because you can't control if you get the job, but you can control if you're going to leave that room better than you came into it.
Ooh, I
You know?
love that. I mean, and that is how I live my entire life. Just that very, very simple but impactful premise. And so the first job I got in the field was working with adults and children with intellectual and developmental disabilities. That's the first job I got. Didn't even really know that was a job. It was a career. Had no idea. But I didn't even realize that I was the one that always rooted for the underdog. Like if
Mm,
somebody was getting picked on, I'm gonna be their friend. Right.
me
But what I
too.
realized, Nikki, in growing into who I am today is that I'm really fighting for myself. I'm really
Mm,
protecting myself. I'm really looking out for myself because I considered myself the underdog in so many different areas and elements of my life. And
mhm.
so the job was a bit stressful. I did get burnt out to the point where I was trying to get a job at McDonald's. But did you know that McDonald's takes you through a whole personality quiz thing? Like, it's a lot.
I did not know that. Also, by the
Yes.
way, I think the turnover rate for social workers, because it's such a hard job, is 3 years
Or less. But you're
or
exactly
less.
right. Because of it's a couple of factors that go into play. A lot of it is lack of education, lack of preparation, not understanding the population or the job. And so it wasn't until I didn't get any other job. I even wanted to be a pharmaceutical salesperson, and I know I can't sell a thing. I talk a lot. I'm a little convincing,
I
but
can't
I
sell
can't sell
anything
nothing.
either.
Look, they ain't gonna buy it. So I never got another job. And so my daddy would always tell me, baby girl, use what you got to get what you want.
Ooh, I love
So
it.
I was like, this is what I have. And I think that's a lot of people overlook or, mischaracterize or not value what they have, because that job, my first job in the industry, is why I'm sitting where I am today. And
Mm,
so and I often guide people when I'm doing talks to professionals, say, just look at what you have now, look at where you are and build upon that. And that's what I did. I said, okay, I'm good at this, right? I am able to look at people's capabilities and not their inabilities and
mm.
build upon that in a person-centered way. There's a theorist that I absolutely love, Matthew no, not Matthew Knowles, that's Beyonce's daddy, not Matthew Knowles. Malcolm Knowles, the theorist. He created person-centered care, person-centered planning, person-centered strategy. So that's the theory. And I
Yes.
learned that when I first started in the industry, when you actually focus on the person and not their condition and not what's going on around them, you focus on the person first, the first person perspective, and you start to build out from there. And when I saw somebody's life being better because of certain interventions, it was a game changer for me. And I'm gonna say this is silly, but when I saw one of my clients, they took a cruise to Hawaii. At that time,
Mm,
I had never been on a cruise, and I darn sure had never been to Hawaii. I was like, dang, this person who is looked upon as less than or not a contributing member of society is doing things that I, with a degree and a professional job, have never done. Mind blown. And so
mm.
I said, if people get the right interventions at the right time, they can fulfill aspirations and dreams that they've never thought of. And it made me feel good. When you feel good for someone else's success, you
Yeah.
in the right business. Because that's a feeling, Nikki, tell me if I'm wrong. That is a feeling you could never get anywhere else. You get married, you have a baby, but that feeling,
Yes, I love to see my friends tell me that one of my special skills is to see what somebody is innately really good at, even if they don't know it themselves, and to then point that out and go, I don't know if you know this, but
mm,
you are really good at that. And then championing them to like move in that direction and then telling the whole world that they're good at this. One of my friends, discovered that she was good at this one thing. And I will talk about it everywhere I go in every single room. I have this friend. Her name is Amy. She does this. You need to hire her. And I mean it with all my heart because of how much the work has impacted my life, and I've seen her do it. I love to see people thriving. I love, like, even inside our systems and institutions, you always get those bad eggs, right? Oh, and right
mhm.
now we need better leadership like we have never needed it before. We are so thirsty for it. That feeling that you often get of wanting somebody, I want that person fired, or I want that person this, or I want that. I don't. I want that person to wake up
And do better.
and do better, because that person is just going to take their badness and go to some other business with their badness. I
That
want
is
them
right.
to wake up and realize and come to know what they're capable of inside their goodness. Doing the right
I
thing,
love
even when
that.
no one's watching, and then champion that. Like, when we become a champion for humanity, I think we spend so much time these days focusing on all the ways that people are doing the horrible things, the bad things. We're focusing on bad actors, bad characters, bad this, bad that. And I get it, because it's like a reality show, that you're watching a reality show, but it's real life. And
Real time.
instead, pop your focus to the people who are really doing it well, that are,
Yeah.
yeah, being human and making mistakes, but they're taking accountability. They're repairing. They are doing the right thing even when no one's watching. They are of integrity. They are being honest. Celebrate them. Lift
Mm.
them up. Put your eyes towards that and let it be a light. And the
Oh,
more I think we all do that, like what you're talking about, like cheering people on and watching them thrive and watching them get there, we all rise together. It's the whole thing of like, our freedom is completely intertwined with the freedom of everybody else in this country.
oh my God. The least of these. The Bible
The
talks
least of
about the least of
these.
these. When you support the least of these, you're supporting all of these. It's
That's
something
right.
you said earlier. Oh my God. I love this. I don't know if it's a quote or a saying. The true character of a person is defined by what they do when
Yes,
nobody's watching. Oh my
correct.
gosh. Oh my
Think about
gosh.
it. Think about that for a second. It is true. It is the sitting quietly within yourself and all those human feelings coming up of wanting revenge, of wanting that person to just pay for what they did, and all of that, and just letting it move through you and doing the right thing in spite
Oh,
of.
in spite of. So, there's a saying, I got a lot of them. My mama would tell me, watch out. Because when you dig a ditch for somebody else, you gonna be the one to fall in it.
Yes!
Let me tell you, I'm like, "Mm-mm, I ain't doing it. No."
Every single time.
Every time. You talked about championing humanity. Oh my god, I love that. Just wanting
Yeah,
people to do well, because when they do well, we all do well.
we
Like, what
all
part of
do
that does
well.
not register?
And then also, I think it's the feeling, and it's the feeling of, also, just to bring it back to caregiving, and when you're on a team and you're caregiving for other people, that is the energy that you bring to even that experience when you're wanting to see your loved one thrive in even just a moment, especially when it's Alzheimer's and
Mm,
dementia. With my dad, I know my mother and I struggled with, the how, right? My dad would go, "Oh, look at that. This." silly example, look at the purple sky. My mom, that's not purple. It's a blue sky. The sky is blue. And I would go, Daddy, that is the most beautiful purple sky I've ever
Purple
seen in
sky.
my entire life.
So
That is
your mama, look, your mama is the one I'm talking about in my keynote addresses. I'm talking about your mama. I didn't even know it. Like,
yes.
whatever color that sky is to them,
Let it be.
Let it be. Right? Because why not?
Let them thrive in their purple sky and let them just be in that. And so, and I know it's hard as human beings for us to get to that place, but I think it is part of the spirit and the feeling of just wanting people to be happy and to thrive even in their illnesses. I want to say, like, so your grandmother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Is that the first time that it touched your family?
Yeah, so, and we don't know if it was Alzheimer's or not, but we do know it was dementia. We know Alzheimer's is the most common type.
It's the most common
But
type, right?
yeah, that is the first time. But the elders would say, well, such and such had it, and they mama had it, and then they granddaddy had it. But really, they probably didn't have it at all. It might have just been mild cognitive impairment. But
Totally.
this was the first diagnosed person in our family. And I remember the day my grandmama was diagnosed. Well, let me back up. I remember the day I came to the realization that she had it. My sister called me. I was at work at the disabilities agency. I remember I was turned this way. I was typing. I just remember I was typing. I had her on speakerphone. She said that my grandmama was going to neighbors' houses crying and asking for help because she could not find her way back home. Nikki, in that moment, there was a knot in my throat and my heart dropped out of my body, right? My mind knew what it was, but my heart was not going to accept it. So I had an internal battle within seconds of that information. And so I did and I'm in the industry, very knowledgeable, but it hits differently when it lands on your doorstep every time. And so I had to go through the grieving process. I mean, you're going to go through the grieving process. We call it anticipatory grief. While the person is still living, the denial, the anger, the bargaining, all that stuff. And then I had to sit with it and say, okay, I need to take off my granddaughter role and put on my licensed social worker role so I can get my family through it. But I still make sure that I carved out time to be the granddaughter. I think a lot of times family caregivers, they take on the role of caregiver, but they forget about their God-given role, whether it's spouse, which is the number one caregiving population, daughters-in-law. And so, I want caregivers to be very, very mindful about the fact that they still need to have some moments. You talked about the moments earlier because there are going to be moments of lucidity when you're caring for someone with Alzheimer's or dementia. You want to be sure that you're showing up as the daughter at that moment when they remember you, you know?
You really
So,
do.
I don't feel anything differently than what anybody else feels as a professional, but also as a granddaughter and a daughter who had to support my daddy, who was the primary caregiver, who did not even have a good relationship, wasn't even talking to his mama. So you talk about a challenge there. Like, because they ain't listening to the grandkids. They're not listening to the children or the grandchildren. They're so hell bent on what they feel and what it's supposed to be. But I tell you, a diagnosis of Alzheimer's or dementia is going to be a gut punch to everybody in that family.
I always say it's a before and after diagnosis. When you get any kind of, even when I was pregnant with my youngest and I got his congenital heart defect diagnosis, it is a marker. There's a before and after. There's everything that came up to that moment and everything, like Christ, before Christ, after Christ.
Yeah.
It is like a marker in your life and there's no going back. There's only moving forward. And like you said, that tug between the heart and the head of like the heart is breaking and the mind sometimes goes into denial. And it is taking those two things and bringing them together to say, okay, how do we move forward? and how do we do this in the best way for our loved one? And then when it's complicated, like you said, like your grandmother wasn't even in relationship with your father. How do you, like, how does that conversation even happen? Do you say to your father, I understand that this is complicated, so we're going to step into this? Like,
Well, that's what
how does that
happened.
happen?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it happened just that way. And my mama would always say, "If your conscience don't whip you, then neither will I." That's what Bob says, right?
That's so good.
And look now, now that's what she used to say when she used to, get the punishing and fussing, and I'm just like, what does that even mean, right? But then I'm like, oh man, that was deep. And so we stepped in because it was me and my sister. We stepped in and handled it because he wasn't he didn't have the mindset to handle it. And so when he saw,
Correct.
again, you gotta know the relationships in the family. I'm the
Totally.
baby, I'm the daddy's girl. So I didn't say to him what I thought he needed to do because he wasn't going to receive that.
Mm-mm.
However, when he saw me at work doing it, knowing I got to take off time off of work, travel an hour to take care of grandmama, do what she got to do. My sister was there doing her thing. And one day he said, bring mama here.
Mm.
Because what happened was she was in a facility and my sister, she was absolutely the boots on the ground. And she called me and she said, grandmama leaving here today because she wasn't bathed. She had on clothes that were stained and soiled from days before. She said there were flies throughout the facility. Girl, I was on my way down there as she was telling me what was going on. And I called my daddy and I told my daddy, we taking grandmama out of the nursing home. We just gonna figure something out. And he said, bring mama here. And I said, thank you, Jesus.
Hallelujah.
I'm always in prayer, right?
Yeah.
Get yourself a prayer partner, whoever you believe in. Prayer. Look, there you go. You got to have a relationship with God, a higher power, because they're going to take over and step in when you can't. Of course,
It's
prayer
so
without
true.
works is dead, but you doing the work, you praying, and Lord knows he steps in every time. When my daddy said that, I called my sister. I said, just take her to my daddy. He said, bring her there. But I'm going to tell you also, too, that was his opportunity to make amends
I was
as
just
well.
gonna say, I've seen it so many times, and we even saw it in our own family of, you know, a family member really, I don't know if it was just being not wanting to look at it and not wanting to be, and here I am traveling from California back to Georgia and California back to Georgia with my whole family during COVID, no less, with my heart baby, and like
Oh, your heart, baby.
in an RV so that we didn't get my baby sick and we didn't bring anything back to my dad. It was crazy. It was crazy, Dr. Macie. And I think something took over in this one family member of like, oh, wait a second. Wait, I I gotta jump in. I gotta jump in. I gotta jump in now.
Mhm.
Right. And so I do think that sometimes um when we can't bring somebody to it, right? I do think what is so much stronger is just you cleaning up your side of the street and you doing the things that you need to do for you. You
Mhm.
being the parent you need to be, you being the daughter you need to be, you being the granddaughter you need to be, the friend you need to be, the whatever you need to be. And stop worrying about what everybody else is doing.
Yeah, that's right.
You just do the thing that you need to do. And sometimes that miracle happens where that person notices it and that person sees it and it moves them to open their heart just that much to let that
Mm.
light in. So I do think the modeling is really, really important. Um, you then eventually you ended up writing a book, Dementia Caregiver's Guide to Care. So, what made you, in your experience, go, this, because I know for me, Liz and I talk about this all the time. The whole reason why this podcast exists is because, she started it before we met and she knew nobody. Nobody was talking about this stuff. Nobody
It's
was
which is blows my mind. Now I
crazy.
understand years ago why it wasn't a thing because that was what people felt was a normal part of family life. You just take care of yours and you keep it pushing. They didn't realize that family caregiving is the backbone to the long-term care system. They didn't
Absolutely.
realize that they have permission to say how they feel and how they felt about caring for someone who they love. They didn't know that they hadn't have permission to say, I'm tired. I need help. They didn't know that they had permission to ask for help or accept help because
Yeah.
depending on your generation or what side of the country you grew up on, asking for help was a sign of weakness.
Oh,
Especially, I'm gonna tell you, especially for Black women, you gotta stand up, you gotta bear it.
listen, I tell everyone every single day on my hardest day, and I mean living at a hospital with my 5-year-old baby who just came out of heart surgery and everything that goes into that, and having another son at home and my dad diagnosed across the country. On my hardest day, I would say to myself, I know almost every Black woman that I know has had a harder day than this.
Come on.
Put your big girl
Come on.
pants on, Nikki. You can do this. Like,
And
and because that's
being a
true.
woman, yeah, being a woman first, right? Because we are natural nurturers. We're gonna take care of theirs, ours, but the person that we're not gonna take care of is us, right? That's as a woman in general. And then you add the disparities on top of that, it further compounds that. And so, I remember, and I don't know why I was thinking, this conversation just came up, and I said, I don't even think this is going to be appropriate for this podcast, but I'm feeling this now. I know where mine comes from, where that spirit of, take it and be strong. It comes from my mama, who it came from her mama. It is
Exactly.
absolutely a traditional type of mindset. Because I remember my mom would tell me when I was in
Very
school, I
Southern.
was very Southern. If I was sick, she would say, just go anyway, even if you have to come back home. So you
Girl,
can show your
yes.
teachers that you are serious about your classwork, that you are serious about being somebody,
Yes.
that you are serious about doing well. And that's in elementary, middle, high school. Okay, fast forward to when I'm working a professional career. I may say to my mom, I'm not feeling good. Well, just go anyway.
Anyway.
So that way, even if you have to come back home, that's where it comes from. Now, after COVID, she didn't say none of that. That was like, if you cough and you don't feel good, you better not go in there. I'm like,
In
oh, that is
fact,
you?
you put a mask on, you get in that guest bedroom, and you don't come out. Like, no.
That's right. Don't even call me on the phone. Look,
Dr.
Nikki,
Macie,
you can't get it over the
uh-uh.
phone.
I don't care. I don't care. I don't even want you in a mile vicinity. But I will say that was the same upbringing I had. I always tell this story that tells you everything you need to know about my grit, and also why it was
Mm,
so hard for me to learn how to ask for help. I was 10 years old. I was competing in a talent competition in New York, and I was there with my mom and my grandmother. I opened up literally opened up my performance, toe touch down into a split, and I felt it and I heard it. Crack. And I was like, I just broke my foot.
Jesus.
And I finished the entire performance, back tuck, back handspring, spins, like everything. Came off stage, collapsed, crawl over. I'm crying. I crawl over to my mom, crawl over to my grandmother. There is a bone sticking, like there's a
Oh
bone
my
sticking
God.
out of my foot. And my mother is going, you suck it up. You don't cry in front of these people. You are embarrassing me. You suck it up right now, okay? You suck it up. And my grandmother, who's there, who's a nurse, is going, Terry, I think her foot is broken. We are not dealing with this right now. That was my mom was tough.
She's
And
hardcore.
she was so hardcore because her daddy was so hardcore.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't like she pulled it from thin air. My grandfather was a tough, tough, tough man.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that conditioning of suffering, it's gotten us in so much trouble as women. There is grit and we should have grit, but we should also know when we have to raise our hand and say, I need help.
Okay. You're right. So right? Raising your hand and saying, I need help. I can't do it. With me knowing of course, from the professional aspects, the theoretical perspectives when it comes to care and women and our innate ability to do this and that, but also from the personal perspective, being a woman, providing care, better understanding now the nuances of Alzheimer's and dementia, because the way I was raised, all old people get dementia. It's a natural part of aging. As a matter of fact, it's called old timers. Well, all that was wrong, right? So when I got all
All
this
of it.
information, I'm calling my mom. I said, "Ma, it's no such thing as old timers." Guess what she said? Well, I don't know. That's just what they told me. That's kind of how, as you talked about conditioning, that's how information is still relayed in certain communities. But I am so
Yes.
thankful for the internet. I am so thankful for social media. I am so thankful for you that we're
Mm.
using untraditional media or using media in an untraditional way to get information out there that has never been mainstream. We're seeing more of this conversation now, and we need to see
Yeah.
more of it. So I thank you for that. But it's for that reason, number one, understanding what women struggle with in terms of just being women and living, coupled with better understanding what dementia and Alzheimer's actually is
Is.
and what that journey ahead might look like for you. I'll tell you, Black people and Black women in particular are 2 times more likely to develop
Yes.
Alzheimer's disease than their comparable groups, but
Yes.
least likely to have the information, the education, and the
Resources.
resources in the early stages when they're most effective. So,
Mhm.
Nikki, say no more. Say no more. I was on a research team at a very prestigious university as a practitioner on the research team with researchers. They would do the studies, we would pull the information, they pull it together, we would publish it. You can check out, I have several publications out there. But one day I said, Nikki, well, what are we gonna do about it? Right? Because as a licensed social worker, I'm outcomes oriented, solutions focused, right?
Yeah.
They said to me, we're gonna publish it. I know that. We already did that. What is the action plan gonna be? Well, we're just gonna publish more, because when you publish more, you draw down more funding. And so I said at that moment, as I was sitting at that table, I said, God, give me the vision to be
Mm.
able to use this information, to be able to use this data to create something palatable and tangible that I can take to the community that's going to affect lives. So what I did was I actually applied for a grant and I received it to create an educational program that was geared toward the Black community.
Oh,
I st- I structured the talks. It was a 3-part talk, right? I structured it in predominantly Black community, so that way I could, alleviate a lot of the barriers that they may encounter. I partnered with the Alzheimer's Association, who offered free respite for anyone who came to the dementia training. It was called In Our Community Dementia Speaks. But I will tell you, I don't care where I went, MLK Boulevard, the hood, or whatever you consider the hood, or kind of rough neighborhoods, white people always showed up. It was one time Mr. Bob came. Mr. Bob is a 90-year-old man. I said, Mr. Bob, wait for me. You know what I mean? Let's walk together. White people always showed up. They're coming to get the information. Sometimes it takes a little bit more when it comes to my community, the Black community. You got to show up
mhm.
with representation. When I
Yes.
tell you, when I did the training at MLK Park and at Congressman Clyburn's activity center in Columbia, South Carolina, it was packed wall to wall of Black people. I had a couple of white people. I love them too. But it warmed my heart to see, and
Yeah.
they followed me. I'm gonna land this plane in a minute about why I wrote these books. They followed me everywhere I went in Columbia. And I told my husband, I said, I feel so bad because I know that they're caregivers and they're coming to the trainings every time. And I would say to them, I'm gonna say exactly the same thing. And they would say, I know, like I'm gonna say the same jokes too, and I'm gonna expect you to laugh again. They say, I know, but I'm experiencing a new situation. And I was
Mm,
telling my husband, I was like, that makes sense because they're going to hear the same things, but they may only take away parts and pieces based on what they're experiencing. And my
currently.
husband
Yeah.
he is the most plain speaker. He ain't putting too much sauce on it. Guess what he said to me? Well, just write it down for him. Like, so in my mind, I wasn't even thinking of book. I was thinking just like write some notes down for him. And I was like, that's gonna take too long to write notes. I was like, "Well, I can write a book." And so
Yeah.
that's why my books are intentionally less than 75 pages
I
because
listen, and you can also listen on tape, you guys, and it is such an easy listen and a
oh,
quick
thank you
listen.
so much.
Of course, and it really is. You do take people through all of those questions that you ask yourself at all the different stages of caring for a loved one with an Alzheimer's and dementia diagnosis.
So I wrote it down in a palatable, compact, digestible way that caregivers can make a difference in not only their person's life that's living with dementia, but theirs as the caregiver. It's a small book, it's a short read, but you're going to refer back to it over and over again. And Nikki, when they're done with it, guess what they're going to do? Give it to
Give it to
somebody
somebody
else who
else.
needs it.
Absolutely. I thought about that. I also thought about the fact that it's like a Bible for caregivers that Dr.
Mhm.
Becky has Good Inside. Good Inside is a book that I go back to all the time when it comes to parenting. I go back to her Good Inside and I'll look up like what does she say about this? And remind myself. It's one of those books and I love the fact that it is a shorter read because let's just be honest, as caregivers, do we really have time to sit down and read a 300-page whatever book? No, we don't.
Ain't happening.
It's not going to happen. We might get through that in 1 year by reading 3 pages every night before we pass out at night because we're so tired. Like, maybe. It is such a palatable, easy read and one of those situations where, like, you could go, wait, what did Dr. Macie say about this? You flip to it. There it is. Question answered. And I think for so many people, Liz and I both get calls all the time. My parent was just diagnosed, or this person was just diagnosed. What do I do here? What do I do there? We have been so blessed, Liz and I, to meet people like you that we can say, actually, there is a book that you can get.
That's a blessing.
Go get Dr. Macie's book. Seriously, you're going to refer to it 50 times,
Yeah.
right? I am so grateful that people like you are writing the books. Like your husband said, just write it down.
Just
I'm
write it
so
down.
grateful because now we have things that we can say or go to this person's page. Ty Lewis is another person out there who is just doing the work, the
Oh, I
day-to-day
love
work.
her.
Oh, she's amazing.
And her
I mean,
mama, I met her like,
Gertrude.
I don't know her, she's my friend in my head. I saw her mama or met her mama online. Before I
Yeah.
even knew her, I was like, "Look at Miss Gertrude."
Gertrude, I just was like, their story, the way she gives care brings me to tears. It is so sacred and it is so holy. But she is another one that I'll say, just go to her Instagram page.
Yeah.
You know,
You're gonna be encouraged. Yeah.
you reach out to Ty, reach out to Dr. Macie because like, now that you have help, just get it, right? Um, you've described your book as real talk for real people with real concerns. The tone candid, it is practical, it is no nonsense. Why do you think that is the right choice? I prefer that as a reader, but why did you think when you were writing it down that that was the right choice over a clinical approach? Because you could have done that because you have the experience.
Okay. A fair question, fair enough. Through an empirical experience, right?
Yeah, yeah.
When I got on social media 10 years ago in 2016, I was doing these videos for a university where I was working. And so I needed the people to know that I was
Academic.
knowledgeable. I was academia, like I was
Yes.
research based, like this was
Yes.
evidence, I needed the people to know that, right?
Yeah.
What I didn't know, so I spoke in that tone. And if you go back to my very first videos, you're going to see it. So I spoke in that tone, very matter of factly, very academically, right? I did not get a lot of views. I'm gonna tell you that right now. I didn't know my audience. I did not know my audience at all, and I had a good friend share with me. That's why you got to have good friends in your circle. You don't need to be in a
Yes.
circle where people are going to tell you what you want to hear. That's going to be your downfall. I had a friend who called and she said, "Macie, I hate them darn videos." She was like, "You don't talk like that. Like, that's not you. And in fact, you're only speaking to the academic world. They already know this stuff. Like, who is your target audience?" I'm like, "Family caregivers." Well, they not gonna listen to you. Well, clearly the data supported it. And so she like ripped me a new one. Elizabeth, I'm
Love.
talking about you. She ripped me a new one. And I was like, dang, she is right. And so even with public speaking. My public speaking is actually who I am, but it was something about them videos that was a disconnect. And so when I saw people, when I'm speaking and they come back and they say, "I like when you said this. I like when you said that." It's never anything that I say clinically. It's always
Mhm.
the thing that I say plainly. And my sister would say, "Girl, when you talk, you talk professional, then you get country, and then you get back professional, right?"
Because that's who
Yeah,
I am.
it's a Dr. Macie experience, baby. That's
That's
just
it.
what it is. So the reason why it is real talk is because through data, I know that people resonate with me with real talk. Not only do I see it in the view count and the viewership, I read the comments and people tell me to my face when they come to my conferences and they are returners. They
Mm.
and if I'm in the grocery store, Nikki, they'll ask me, "How your grandmama doing?" Well, she dead, so I'm sure
Oh.
she's fine because she's in heaven. So she's doing good, right? So I'm walking away and I'm like, dang, all that other stuff I said, hey, they want to know about my grandmama. How your daddy doing? Like, is he still fussing
Yeah.
and cussing and cutting? You know? So
That's
all of that, you
connection.
gotta listen. You have to listen to your community. And that's what I do. Even though I talk a lot, but I'm a good listener too.
I think that, but that's so true because I think what people are hungry for is authenticity.
Oh, absolutely.
It's authenticity because it's through that that you find connection, real
Connection.
connection,
For
and
sure.
it is also having the courage to share, who you are. I think as women, it's been harder because we have had to, um,
Wear a
do
mask.
things. Well, we also, it's like whatever a man shows up as, we have to be 3 times better in every single area. And then if you're a Black woman, you got to be 6 times better in every single area to get people to listen to
That's
you.
right.
And, and, and we sometimes feel like we have to become that man. We have to become
Mm,
that academic person. We have to become something that we're not in order to be respected and heard. And I think what you learn, what I've learned, is that no, we just have to show up
mm.
as who we are
That's who
and
we
be
are.
ourselves and connect in a
Unapologetically.
unapologetically and connect in a very real way with people who are also going through the valley. That is what they're looking for, is human connection.
Mm. Going through the valley. And again, that is an excellent point. What is your purpose? Why are you here? And are you
Yeah,
meeting the needs of the people that you say, you're in position to care for and to support? That's how I speak to my caregivers. Sometimes people say I'm a little rough. No, I'm not gonna lie. People don't say that. Two people out of 2,000 people might say, "You shouldn't say it like that. We're doing the best we can." Look, I say Imma hold your hand when I say it, but some people are not. I just might not be for a couple of people, but I am for most
same.
people. And look, and if I want thank you, baby. If I want change, I
Yeah,
have to ensure that the people who I'm speaking with, not speaking to, or not speaking at, resonate with it, understand it, and
absolutely.
most importantly, Nikki, trust it.
I was just going to say the trust factor is everything. I always say to myself, especially in working in an industry where people just lie to your face all the time.
For sure. For
They just
sure.
lie to your face all the time and then think somehow you're not going to find out about it,
Look,
and
you
you're
are
like,
doing
"Oh, what?"
amazing.
Well, and I am a person that is known. I'm going to tell you the truth, whether you want to hear that truth or not. I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm going to be honest with you, and guaranteed when you come up across your own valley or where you're needing advice or when you want to, who are you going to go talk to? The person that lied to your face or the person that you know is going to give it to you straight?
Oh, I love that, and I
People
will
will
say
trust
too,
that.
you
If
trust
you,
that.
they will trust it.
Let me say this too, in that same vein, grace.
Yeah.
Grace. Caregivers, give yourself grace.
Oh,
You ain't gonna get it right every
yes.
time, nor do
No.
we expect you to get it right every time. You are
Mm-mm.
learning and growing through your valley experience,
And doing something
and
for the first time.
you doing it for the first time. You know what? Somebody would say to me, my 17-year-old, Mama, you too old to be wearing that. Well, how you know? You ain't never been this age. I ain't never been this age either. So guess what? I'm wearing it, boo. Right? They doing it for the first time, figuring it out. And so when you have those connections and you have the
Yeah.
information and you have the education, just do it differently. Just try it and see if it works. Don't just knock it. And the other thing too, simply because it did not work before, try it again. I tell caregivers that all the time. If you've tried, redirecting your loved one and it didn't work before, try redirecting them again because maybe you should redirect early in the morning when they're well rested. Maybe you should redirect in a lower tone. Maybe you should redirect with something that they enjoy, like ice cream. You know, they love ice cream, anything sweet,
Yes.
right? Just try it again at a different time using a different method, it just might work. And when I talk with just people in general, they ask, how can we as a community, as a people, support family caregivers? Number one, see them as a person first,
No,
right? And
always.
not just, oh, they're not going to be able to do this because they're a caregiver. They won't be able to come over here because they're a caregiver. Bring the activity and the event to them. Still
Mhm.
ask them, would you like to go? Would you like to do this or would you like to do that? And stop asking them, let me know if I can help you with anything or do you need help with anything? Just do it.
Just do it.
They need support, ongoing support, and stop asking them. Just do it because they still may be dealing with, I don't want to inconvenience you. I don't want to burden you, because at any given point in time, I say this all the time, all of us, we're an accident, an injury, or illness away from either being a caregiver or needing
Yes.
one. Give
Yes.
yourself grace and show up for people who you would want to show up for you.
Yes, I love that. And then you were talking about even the specificities in her book, you guys, like those questions, those little things that you ask yourself that's not little things in a caregiving experience. It's big things like how do you get your loved one to drink water? What do you say to a dementia patient who insists they need to go home, but they're already
Oof.
home? Like all of those things you cover in a book. In your book, I want to talk about because I know we're getting close on time. um, I found this to be fascinating because I know when we were going through our experience with my dad and he was in a facility and it was COVID and that sucker shut down.
Oh my God. Yeah.
You wrote a letter to the editor, am I right, during COVID, advocating to reopen nursing homes to family caregivers. You won a Golden Pin Award for it.
Yep. Didn't even know I won it
That sounds
because
like
it was
something
still
that would
COVID.
happen to me.
Oh, you didn't know?
I never know until people tell me things, and I just go, "Oh my god, that's so great!
Thank you.
This is great!" But first of all, congratulations. Secondly,
Thank
what
you.
a brave thing to do at a time when there were so many different opinions on what we should be doing. Again, experiencing a first time in our lifetimes of having to live through a pandemic and what's the right thing to do. We don't know the right thing to do, and using your voice to advocate for a community of people. And I know from firsthand experience, when we finally got to on the ground to where my dad was, and we rented an RV, we drove like the
I
Griswolds
love that.
across the country and got to my dad, and he was riddled with infection,
Oh God.
high fever, riddled with infection. And then I kept hearing these horror stories of what was coming out of all of these nursing home facilities across the country, of what what goes down on the regular, but what specifically went down during COVID? So, what made you write that letter? Because I'm wanting it to lead us into a conversation about advocacy and how to
Mhm.
be an advocate for our loved ones. So, start with the letter, though.
The letter was written because I was pissed off. I was mad as hell. I was. And and I was still doing consultations because at this point I had to do consultations virtually. And
Yep.
so I had clients in the facilities and I had family caregivers who could not see
Get
them.
to them.
And I know what isolation does to people in general,
Yes.
especially those who are seniors and especially those who have Alzheimer's or a form of dementia. And so, wasn't nobody gonna hear me in this house but my husband, and he got sick of me ranting and raving. And so I penned an op-ed and it got published because they don't always publish that, they pick and
Yeah.
choose, what they're gonna publish. They chose that particular one because not only do I provide not only do I express myself, but I'm going to lead with resources. I'm not going to tell you, I'm just not one of those ones that complain. I come with solutions. I'm going to tell you the
Absolutely.
issue. I'm going to tell you why it's an issue. And I'm going to tell you some possible resources or recommendations to mitigate those issues, right? Because it's going to be education and training in what I do. Somebody told me a long time ago, the governor knows who you are. And I was like, I don't think so. Every time, I see him, I introduce myself and he's always going to say, yeah, how you doing? Right. 2 weeks later, Nikki, that's when he made provisions for family caregivers
Mm,
to visit. And I was like, oh, shoot, he, I think he does see me. I think he does know me. I think he does listen. But and in my mind, it could be a delusion I am presenting to myself, but God darn it, you got to be delusional sometimes.
you do.
I believe that people inherently are good people. And I think that they want to do good things and they want to do the right things, but sometimes they don't know what the right thing is. So I
Mhm.
am really big on let me give you the information. Let me explain to you. I want to make sure you understand why X, Y, and Z. And from the country, we say when you know better, you do better. Now, when you know better and you still don't do better, then that lets me know you just might not be a nice person, right? But
Correct.
I give people the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Advocacy is so vitally important. People underestimate the power of advocacy, and the best people to advocate for caregivers are caregivers and
Absolutely. I
those
mean,
who receive the support from their caregivers.
absolutely. I was so lucky when I started in social justice work whenever I was in my early 20s. I learned from I followed and was mentored by a group of amazing Black women, actually, and who really that was where the beginning of learning how to be an advocate
Mhm.
for me, and also how to lead and how to go through really hard things, but find the joy. They would remind me there are reasons why you sing psalms and hymns as you are
Yeah.
going through the valley of the shadow of death.
Come
Right?
on.
Like, and so I learned so much about being an advocate from these women, and I agree that there is no greater advocate for, like, in this world than a caregiver who is in it themselves. But what would you say to somebody who is, because I see it all the time. I see it at Children's Hospital where a mom doesn't want to speak up, right? Because that doctor knows so much more, or this nurse, or this or that. But you have this instinct and you have this feeling. And what would you say to that person who is like, oof, but they know so much more? How would you say to them, how would you light that fire underneath them to say, but you were that loved one's person? Nobody knows that person better than you,
That's what
right?
I say very plainly. You know you, and you know your loved one way better than any physician, way better than any researcher, way better than anyone who has never sat in your seat, live in your house, drank your water,
There you
right?
go.
You are the one. And how can you expect somebody to make changes that positively impact you when they don't even know you? They
Mm-hmm.
don't know your story. They don't know your care story. I have legislators call me all the time. And I ain't gonna lie, the very first time it happened, I was very surprised. They called me to ask me questions that they had no idea about. They would have constituents call them and ask them questions that I'm gonna give you an example. This is not what happened, but I'm gonna give you an example. They had a constituent call a lawmaker to say, "Hey, my Medicare does not pay for this, and I need this Hoya lift, right? I need this lift system. I need this shower chair, and Medicare won't cover it." Legislator calls me, "Well, Macie, can you tell me what Medicare covers and what Medicare doesn't cover?"
Isn't it amazing that they have no idea?
I was
They are
like,
making decisions. They are making decisions for us. They are going up there to make laws to represent their constituents in a system that they don't even understand.
understand. So that phone call actually lit a fire under me
Good.
to not necessarily go into politics. However, social work is political.
It is.
But I know that I needed and wanted to impact change on the decision-making level. Of course, I
Absolutely.
provided the information. And so I'm vice chair of the board of trustees at the South Carolina State University, which
I
is a
love it.
state-supported institution. Had no idea, Nikki, how political that was, but this is how ancestral the process is. And I don't mean it in a good way. I'm just describing it. The lawmakers that we vote for,
Mm-hmm.
in turn, have to vote for the trustees. So I vote for you, and now you got to turn around and either vote for me or not vote for me. Now you know if you don't vote for me, that might affect your vote. You know what I mean? But
Correct.
I'm happy that it is an election process and a process that we have to go through vetting to be able to pass the screening to actually be voted upon and to face the General Assembly. That needs to be a process. And I value that
Yes.
process because now we know through accountability that we have people leading these large universities that are making decisions for people who are going to be educated in various fields, right? And now they have an opportunity, especially with me on the board, to better understand what gerontology is.
Mm-hmm.
What do gerontologists do? I had someone, an
Mm-hmm.
alum, actually share with me. She said, "I sent your videos to a student that wasn't quite sure what she wanted to do, but she knew she wanted to be in the area of aging and she really didn't know what that looked like." She said, "I got somebody for you." So
Mm-hmm.
representation, Nikki, is so vitally
It
important
is.
at the highest level.
It
And when I'm
is.
doing the work that I'm doing, I don't know if you know Lisa Gibbons or not. Really good
Of
friend, love her
course.
down, love her to death. She actually wrote the back cover quote for my first two books. When she awarded me with the award last year at the Illuminate Gala, I made sure that particular people were in the room that had no idea what caregiving was, had no
Yeah.
idea what Lisa's Care Connection caregiving community did, and really, in fact, really didn't have any idea what it was that I did. Right?
Yeah.
And so I ensure when they left, they donated to, her nonprofit. They were I'll tell you what they said. They were enlightened
Yes.
by the whole field of gerontology and realized, even though their loved one was not living with them, realized that they were a caregiver. My job was done.
Yeah.
My job was
That's the
done.
thing. I think so much of advocacy, and I know I've done it in the space of Alzheimer's and dementia and caregiving, but I also do it for Children's Hospital all the time and working on our advocacy committee, which is so much of conversations with legislators.
Yeah,
Because what people don't understand is everything is political, from the water that you
everything.
drink to the
Mm.
fact that caregiving is not considered a legitimate profession.
Whew.
And the reason why is because the rich people have money to just throw at the problem. But that is 5% of our population. What are the other
If that.
95% supposed to do? And it is
That's
an
right.
economic issue. It is a crisis that we are facing with the baby boomers getting up there. And this is about to hit our economy in such a way. And Liz and I have been talking about forever. Senator Cory Booker just started talking about caregiving and the fact that it should be legislated. And Liz and I are trying to push people on the podcast, everyone that show up to a town hall, go show up and talk
Yes.
to your senators, your
Sign up.
congressional members, it doesn't matter. I think in our country, we have gotten to this place where so many people have been brainwashed to just pick a side. And it has gotten us in such trouble where we now are facing a piece of legislation that was passed last year by our administration where we are about to lose trillions of dollars in Medicaid, in Medicare, and it's going to happen after the midterms this November, where all the
I pray that we get a
500
miracle.
500 hospitals in our country are facing closing because the entire system is held up by Medicaid and Medicare. And so what people aren't understanding, right, is like, while we're so busy picking sides, we're not paying attention
And on
to
top of that,
what's
Nikki,
happening.
so let me say this too, because you're exactly right. And I'm going to go one better. I don't care how much money 99% of the American population has, long-term care will eat it up in a matter of a few
Hundreds
years.
of thousands, hundreds of
Of
thousands of dollars.
Like easy.
Yep.
I'm talking about in-home care, and I'm also talking about out-of-home care.
Absolutely.
It's that 1% that can afford it. But let me tell you this. You might be able to afford care, but it ain't guaranteed that you're going to get good care. It
Correct.
still requires quality people to provide care to you or your loved one. That
Workforce
requires
pipeline.
training. You talk about the turnover rate.
Yep.
As a social worker, but in healthcare in general. One of the issues is the lack of quality training. A lot of states do not have a requirement in the type of training that caregivers, the professional caregivers and staff should have. Let me speak about dementia. They might have in their law that people who are caring for loved ones with dementia should have training in dementia. Just that general.
Absolutely.
Like that could be a Q&A. That could be an FAQ. They sign it, put it in the file, that's training. But the average person that's working in a memory care community in an assisted living, because it's not going to be nursing home, they are not trained in dementia competent practice. You know why? Because they don't have to be. So what I do is I use it as a marketing tool for assisted livings, because now with the help from folks like you with platforms that may not be typical, because I told you before we came on, you are my Hallmark princess, honey. I love all your Hallmark movies. You are not the person to talk about caregiving, because caregiving and seniors, that ain't sexy, but you are. That's where they're mistaken. And because now we have measures and means to get information to the people who need it the most, now they know what questions to ask, because I tell them what questions to ask. I tell them what to look for when they go into assisted livings and they're thinking about out-of-home placement. So because your commodity, your target audience is much more educated, if you don't have quality dementia education, if your staff has not been there for a long period of time, you don't have longevity, they ain't gonna see you, because it's an assisted living on every corner. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry.
It's a business. It's a business. And so that is all the more reason why we have got to have the conversations, and it does have to be legislated. It has to be legislated in terms of, like you said, a requirement for education. It has to be legislated in terms of how do we support these caregivers? Because when we pull these people out of economy, our economy is going to collapse underneath that. But when we assist them and give them the ability to be able to get affordable care, we get people back out in the economy working, right? So there's so many levels to this.
And there are a lot of intricacies, but what we have to do as advocates, right? Number one, we've lived it. You're currently living it. We have stories, but folks who may have the white coat syndrome. They're not public speakers. They don't want to do it, but we can get their information. And what we have to do a better job of, people like us who are our advocates, we got to do a better job of explaining to our lawmakers how it affects them, how it affects the economy. The care economy is here to stay. Let me tell you this. when family caregivers, especially 20% of the population in the sandwich generation, they are caring for their own family, they are
Mm-hmm.
caring for an older adult loved one, and they're
Mm-hmm.
trying to stay working. They're trying to maintain their sense of sensibility and worth. And as a matter of fact, they need the money to help pay for long-term care for their loved ones. So this is what happens. Because they're a caregiver, and I consider caregiving, family caregiving, an invisible disability, they're not telling their bosses, they're not telling their leadership, they're calling out of work, they're getting passed over for promotions, they're getting burnt out. And what's
Yes.
happening is they are leaving the workforce, whether it's by choice
Yeah.
or by force. When they leave the workforce, guess what? They still have to live. And you know how they live? Now they're applying for governmental assistance. Now you
Mm-hmm.
got two people
Mm-hmm.
utilizing governmental assistance
Mm-hmm.
because you didn't feel it was necessary to legislate support for family caregivers. You did not feel that it was a public health emergency, because it is. But now when you
It
speak
is.
dollars and cents, now it's
Now
going to start to make sense.
that's it. That is absolutely it. Listen, I always say, I don't care if you're a Democrat, a Republican, a purple person, a green part. I don't care. Like, I don't actually care if you are not paying attention to this. And if we are not talking to these people about, here's why it should matter to you. You may not have a direct experience with this. And you may think that, like, oh, this job is about so much more. But actually, no. What families are dealing with on a daily basis, the problems that they are facing on a daily basis, how to feed my family, how to keep a roof over our house. And then
Medication.
when you be medication, how to get health insurance affordable, and then when you plop a caregiving situation down in the center of
Oh,
that,
magnifies it.
magnifies it. These are the conversations we have to be having using our voices, and you do it every day. I have kept you 16 minutes over because I literally could talk to you all day. I'm so grateful, Dr. Macie, that you gave me so much of your time today. Thank you so much. We'll have to have you come back. I want you to meet Liz
Oh,
because
yes. It was
she's
natural and
just
authentic. Sorry.
no, because she's so amazing. And also, I'm so grateful for all the work that you do. Everybody listening, please go follow Dr. Macie Smith on her Instagram. Again, you can just go through her videos one by one by one by one by one. Such a wealth of knowledge. You can get her book, A Dementia Caregiver's Guide to Care. Go hear her speak. You also wrote a dementia caregiver call to action, right? And
Yep, that was my second one.
the
Yep.
complete dementia caregiver's guide, which I also took a look at. Again, Bibles for caregivers. If you are in it and you just need to flip to a section and figure out a question to something, and then they can always also get in touch with you and hire you to be a mediator for them to help guide them through their journey, right?
Yeah. I do caregiver consultations. You can reach out to me on my website at drmaciesmith.com. That's MACIE. I've had people hire me for all sorts of stuff, mediation. If you need help in the court system, I mean, we get, it's a lot of healthcare power of attorney situations that people just ain't doing right, conservatorship, guardianship. And so if you need a support system for your caregiving journey, then you want to reach out to me.
Absolutely. Oh, I adore you, my Southern sister. Oh my gosh.
Thank you so
You're
much. This was a blast. Thank you for
exceeded.
all that you do. You ain't
Aw.
scared, and I love it.
I'm not. And you're not scared either, and I love it. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Macie. And everyone, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.